hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Kayla. I write things. I'm currently working on the fourth draft of the first book in my high fantasy pirate portal duology called Between the Waves, and I have published a poetry collection called The Stories That Told Me that you can get on Amazon if you're interested. And speaking of poetry, today is a poetry day. I went to a show last night and was very inspired. I was writing things on my phone because stuff kept popping into my head. I also was sent an ARC of a poetry collection that's releasing later this month to review, so I need to read that. And when I was at the library the other day, I got so sucked into the poetry section, I actually ended up not getting any poetry because I had 4 other books that I was signing out. But I've just been thinking about it and I haven't been doing that much poetry, and it feels like there's a wave of poetry inspiration coming, so I have decided that today is a day to romanticize the day a little bit, go and get some poetry from the library, and I don't know, just kind of sit down and see if I can inspire myself. Okay, I'm back from the library. I got these gorgeous tulips, which I haven't bought myself flowers in a very, very long time. Genuinely brings me joy when I have fresh cut flowers. And that was actually one of the things that I was excited about when I got this desk, was having a bigger desk and having the space to put a vase of flowers on. So I got these gorgeous tulips because spring is right around the corner, and I just have to keep telling myself that because we're trying to avoid the seasonal depression. So I got back from the library. I got 3 collections of poetry. I tried to pick varying types of poetry. So the first one that I got was The Essential Rumi. I've read poetry from Rumi before, but I've never actually read an entire collection. I'm excited for that. I also got this book, which is called 101 Famous Poems. This one is definitely a little bit older. There's Shakespeare, Rudyard Kipling, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Basically, there's a lot of them that I actually don't recognize, but a lot of them that are just classic poets that I do recognize. Many of the poems are also older than obviously when the collection was put together. So 101 Famous Poems, I thought that would be really interesting to kind of read and study. And I don't know, when I was younger I used to actually enjoy reading quite a bit more more classical poetry, and it's just not something that I've consumed a lot of lately. So I picked that up, and then I also got Where Hope Comes From by Nikita Gill. I have read Nikita Gill before. I read Fierce Fairy Tales by her. I remember enjoying it, but it was also a while ago, so I don't remember if anything stood out to me, but it was enough that I knew the name and knew that she was contemporary, kind of more modern poetry, and I knew that I've enjoyed work from her. So the poetry that I write is pretty contemporary. It's quite contemporary. If you've read my collection, it is definitely not classic. So yeah, I thought that picking up a collection that was a little bit more similar to what I tend to write would also be interesting and inspiring. And yeah, I was also watching the Dead Poets Society. I've kind of paused it for now, just because I wanted to tidy up my desk a bit and do a few things, but I also thought that would kind of help with my poetry mood. I'm also do you ever get those days where you feel you need to cry, but I can't just cry on command? Which seems kind of funny because I actually think that I'm someone that cries quite easily. I cry when I'm happy, I cry when I'm sad, I cry when I'm frustrated. And yet on the days when I feel I could really use a good cry, it's usually really difficult for me to cry. Writing poetry generally helps the tears flow and the emotions release. And also watching Dead Poets Society will make me cry, so. I've just been doing some work, and then this doesn't happen often, but a poem popped into my head. This is what I mean. I really go through phases with poetry. And to be honest, there are certain things that I can do that allow those phases to come faster, and that also allow me to like stay longer in those phases when I'm writing poetry. Lately, I haven't been focusing on prioritizing that, so I haven't been writing very much, but since the show on Wednesday night and then just like reading some more poetry, I've only read a few from the Nikita Gill book and a few from the 101 Famous Poems book, but even then it's such a like overarching thing for me. Like, I guess that's just writing in general. The more I'm kind of absorbed into it, or the more I'm thinking about it and aware of it and trying to exist in that state of mind, that creative state of mind in my life, the more the energy flows, obviously. The more the creativity flows, the more ideas I have. Everything basically is just better when I'm like actively in that kind of creative energy. And you can also be in that kind of creative energy without actively creating something. I think it's just like a mindset thing. Also, something that I would like to get better at doing is like sharing, I guess, more of my work, more of my rough drafts, more of my poetry. And I figured this would be a good video to do that. This is also quite inspired by Anna New here on YouTube. I've recently been watching her after she was in a live stream on Brielle's channel, and I saw her and I realized that I haven't like watched many of her videos in the past. I also realized that she does a lot of poetry, but in her videos she will like share poetry and read her poetry, and she'll also like post them to her Instagram. And I was just thinking that it might be cool to share some of like my rough versions of poetry. So like I'll put it up on the screen, but I basically have a document right now that is supposed to be for the new poetry collection. Currently it's got 10 poems that I've kind of like organized and loosely titled, and they're not fleshed out. Some of them are literally just concepts or ideas for poems that I know I want to write. And then I have a section called All the Mush, which has 6 poems in it. And these poems are kind of just like snippets and stuff that come from either my notes app or I've written in my actual poetry book, which is sitting here somewhere, but I've lost it. Oh, this one. Some of them I've like emailed to myself, which I will do often. And it's kind of just the ones that I've basically written. Like some of these are actually more fleshed out than the ones that already have like titles and kind of concepts written for them, but I just haven't like organized them into the rest of it yet. I don't know, the document's kind of a mess, to be honest. But in the mush pile, I just added 2 more, and I kind of wanted to read them, and I'm rather nervous to read them only because this is basically right how they came out of my head. The first one is a bit longer and will be shortened because it was kind of just like as it was coming. It's less of poetry right now and more of like prose that I was getting ideas out. The second one is a little bit more structured, but yeah, I'm gonna read at least one of them to you. So the first one, I don't know what I'm gonna call it, but it kind of has to do with a lot of the poems in this next collection are like focused around nature. That's honestly a focus that I have in a lot of my poems and a lot of my poetry, and just kind of a lot of the creativity that I do in general. And it's also kind of like relating back to growing older. I don't know what I'll call it yet. There are lines when I smile, creases carving my face, marking the years I've dedicated to my corporealism. I scowl at them, they dig deeper and scowl back. I would never scowl at the lines on my grandmother's face, like rings within a great oak, rippling reminders of the life she's lived, the pieces I carry in my own blood, generational sap from souls long gone. I would never wish for less creases beside her eyes, for that is equivalent to wishing she had smiled less. It would break my heart to want to sand down the rough edges of bark, to stretch her skin and erase those memories of a life well lived. The earth and my grandmother, I would never wish they were younger, less, except perhaps for my own selfish sake, so that I could spend more time with them. I forget that I too am a part of the natural world that gave me everything I love, every reason to smile, every source of my growth lines. So yeah, that one's like definitely not done. It's rough. I stumbled over it a couple times because there's words that need to be like moved, but that's just like, it was straight pouring out. Some of my poems are like that and need cleaning up. Other poems just like come out and I'm like, that's it. That's all it is. Not changing it. It's perfect. Some like higher power definitely spoke through me on that one, and that's just like how it's gonna stay. So the second one is a bit shorter and I would say a bit more polished, but still this is like the first draft, how it came out. Allow me to be soft. I've been stiff and stressed and solid for far too long. I was never meant to be built of porcelain, to grow from the gentle flesh of my youth into a creature petrified, both in heart and soul. I should be flowing with the rivers, ever changing in their shapes, my stubbornness to remain soft, like a rock splitting the stream, the only unmoving thing about me. And that's it. I like that one. I would like more rhythm in that one, I think. The one before, I think, is going to be definitely more prosy, but the second one, I think that I would like it to be more structured. So yeah, anyways, poetry. I also have an ARC for this book. It's called Burn After Reading. It is releasing on, I think, February 25th, but I'll have to double check that. So I'm just charging my tablet because I need to try and figure out, I've never done this before, but it's like an EPUB file. So I need to figure out if I can get an EPUB file onto my tablet to read or like onto my Kindle. I think that's possible. Basically, I don't want to read it on my laptop. I would rather read a physical copy, but I just got like an e-copy. So I'm going to try and read it on my tablet. So yeah, those are the next steps in poetry today. So I finished reading the poetry arc, which was very exciting. It's been a long time since I got reached out to review any sort of arcs. I have been reached out to by an indie author before to review some poetry, but I've never been reached out to by like an actual publisher before, so that was kind of interesting. I still need to like kind of make a post for that, but I've finished reviewing it, which is exciting. I also, as you know, did quite a bit of my own poetry this past week and a half or so, which has been really nice. Every couple of days or so I like get some inspiration for a poem and I'll write a few down and I'll write some inspiration. Most of them are aligned with the theme of my next poetry collection, which is a lot of like nature, connecting with nature and using nature kind of like as a teacher. And it's so interesting because I feel like when I go through phases of poetry, they're generally based around the same sort of theme. Like it's not like I have to force myself to focus on that theme. It's kind of like I feel like that's what's flowing at the moment anyways. So in addition to the 10 poems that I have kind of like numbered in my document for the new collection, I also now have another 11 either concepts for poems, snippets of poems that need to be finished, or like full-on poems in the mush section that I just need to sort through, give names, flesh out a bit, do like first edits on them, and then put them into like the upper section, which means I have 21 poems for the collection so far, which I'm happy with considering I really have not been working on it that much. It's going to be interesting. Poetry is never one of those things that I structure all that much as far as like my creative process around actually writing poetry. I've tried to in the past, but it never works out very well. Like when I'm like, oh, I'll write a poem a day for this month, it often just doesn't work as well. But when I feel the flow coming on, I take advantage of it, and that's usually when I get out like tons and tons of poems. It's usually when I need to process something, so that's fun. But yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed making it, honestly. It gave me a good reminder to, you know, romanticize the little things in life, something that I used to do a lot and I find I don't do as much anymore. I hope this video was a reminder to romanticize your life a little bit and just remind yourself that there are so many things to be grateful for, even when it's really hard to find those things. I hope that you enjoyed listening to some of my original, very rough first draft poetry. I don't normally read out my poetry, but I would love to get more comfortable with doing that. Anything I mentioned in the video, I will leave linked down below. Please like the video if you enjoyed it so that the algorithm knows. Subscribe if you want more videos like this. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.